Well. Good job.
Yeah, you did good.
Welcome everybody to this June 25th regular school board meeting. Now stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is Michelle on?
Yes, I am.
Michelle?
Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, I can hear everything. Thank you.
Is your voice hurt?
No, I got to get sick on my vacation. So yeah.
Well, it sounds terrible, so I'm glad it doesn't hurt. That's good.
All right. Well, can we get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda. And I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can I get a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
All right. Oh. That was quick, at least. Yeah. Get in here real quick. With no fun time. We're on a new business.
Is that one sent email?
This is the ECAP,
Yeah.
right? So, item A, first review, and we're asking for approval as well. So this is 2025-26. It's a new contract with the Opportunity Council. You would have seen a 92-page contract and then an additional document that talks about what Opportunity Council will do, what we will do, along with Nooksack Valley, because they're also doing a similar contract. This actually makes us a subcontractor to DCYF, which is the Department of Children and Families. This is a new version for how we're serving our 4-year-olds and some 3-year-olds in our district. If you remember, for several years, we've had a contract with Opportunity Council for both Head Start and ECAP, where we had 17 slots. And I think the last contract was 88 grand or 89 grand, and they were in our building using their staff. In this version, we actually will get the slots from DCYF. We will have 40 slots from them, so we're more than double. And we receive $10,724 per student. And that goes into helping us fund and hire our own staff. We also have obligations we didn't have in the other contract. We provide transportation. And they provide some pieces. And so the other document you saw on there as well, right? The other document you saw in there was the breakdown of who does what. And so we do know the funding piece for us right now pencils out to be about $100,000 that we add to this to be able to make sure that we have the 4 classrooms that we need. We'll actually have 5 classrooms, so 4 will be a combination of TK and ECAP, and then 1 will be all ECAP, so there'll be a 3-year-old. But what those 5 classrooms will do is provide us some flexibility between students who are typically developing and those who are not, and then flexibility for teachers to move students between groups and some capacity as we get students into the district. And so I'm pretty excited about the partnership with them. And the reason we're asking for approval on it tonight is because those families they're waiting. We haven't been able to make this agreement with them until after we heard back from the state on what kind of allocation that we're going to get. And we certainly could wait, although we don't have another meeting for 3.5 weeks and it's our retreat. What it does is it puts our families in a bind, not really knowing whether they need to get childcare or if they're gonna have their students assigned. And so that's really what this request comes from. I do have a statement from Aaron. He's coming back from WSU, so he didn't know if he'd be able to zoom in, and he wasn't, but I do have a statement from Aaron. He said, this agreement will allow the Meridian School District to serve as a subcontractor for the Opportunity Council to provide ECAP services to 3 and 4-year-old students in our community. In exchange for the district providing these services, the Opportunity Council will pass a portion of the ECAP allocation for each student onto the district for the purposes of hiring staff and developing programming. The agreement clearly delineates each organization's role as well as the financials required to provide the support to our community. So that's why.
When our early childhood education center is built, will these children then be served by that facility?
No, they'll probably be in our kindergarten at that point.
Okay.
Because they'll be older, but I know what you're asking.
But the next step of.
The next step of that, I don't know that we will be the provider because, well, let me rephrase that. I don't know that we will have ECAP in our system if we have the early childhood center there, because we are not gonna run that center. We wanna make sure that it is extended hours, and we wouldn't run an extended hours program with the contract agreements that we have, right? So our teachers only go to a certain amount of time. And so when we've talked about conceptually, how will this work out? We've talked to Opportunity Council, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, they all run early childhood centers across the county. They want a contract, and that's what we're looking for, is someone who will contract in the space. Now, we certainly can provide that as well, but it won't be extended hours. It would be an extension of what we have. So I think we need to wait and see exactly how things are gonna play out. We know we have a shortage of early childcare support in this county, so I could see us doing both. Whether it will be 40 or if we'll have more slots or we'll dial it back, we'll have to wait to see. But we have lots of things that we'll be able to do along the way to determine what kind of program we'll have.
And like space at the IRE, is that a challenge, or is that we good there?
We're good there. We ran 6 classrooms. I don't know if you remember, we started a TK classroom mid-year, and that was our 3rd. And so we'll have our developmental preschool. We will continue that, and then these 5 coming in will give us the 6 early learning classrooms that we've had.
And then like for the 40 kids, does that help kids that are like live in our district? That 40, okay, so it's not, okay.
There may be students from other places. If Opportunity Council is closing or shifting their provider status in a different place in the county, they may offer, but we will place our 40 with us first.
Okay.
Okay. And we have a cap of 44 TK students, so we had 17 with Opportunity Council and Head Start last year, and 44 TK. We're increasing by almost 24 students in early learning and giving kids a great start. So,
Do we have concerns about full days with 3-year-olds? And also, you had mentioned that in Aaron's statement, a portion of payment. Is there a plan down the road for this to receive full funding and be self-sustaining, so that we aren't trying to come up with $100,000 through other levy programs that we have to ask our community for?
yeah, so I think the first part of that, in terms of full day program or not, I would want to ask Aaron if we're running full day with 3-year-olds. I think we're still doing our half day with developmental preschool. I do believe they are full day with the 3-year-olds. And that was a concern that we had when TK came on the line and found that kids did really nice. They did well, they did fine. So no, we're not too concerned with that. And then in terms of the portion, there is an allocation that DCYF gives to Opportunity Council, and the pieces that they'll be providing, they're using the funds to pay for that. So they do family outreach, they do the nursing piece. You know, there are several in that 92-page document, and the other ancillary piece that Aaron provided. It breaks down who does what, and that's what they hold back on their portion. What's nice is this year the state provided a 5% increase in the allocation to providers, and so We do anticipate, because early learning is a big push in the state. And there are some people who are lobbying for universal preschool, right? And I don't think we're gonna see that anytime soon, but there's a chance that as they get increased allocations, we could receive more. We are gonna evaluate whether we run it ourselves or not. It's just that there are obligations that the state requires for ECAP that are split between us and Opportunity Council, and I don't believe for the amount we'll receive for what remains in the allocation, I don't believe we could efficiently do the things that are required on our own to do all of it. So having the partnership now and getting a good sense of how that's gonna work this next year, I'd like to see it, evaluate after this year, probably 2 years, and then decide whether we wanna move forward and become our own contractor in that case. I think the question Jana asked also has some bearing, because I think, in a couple of years, we might be in a position to have an early learning center open as well. We have our funding now, so it's just a matter of getting architects in and doing the design and the planning, so that'll be a factor as well.
And Daniel, the extra $100,000 that we're gonna have to come up with, that's in the budget.
Yeah, we do have a budgeted for, and it is a balanced budget. One thing that James brought up today when we were meeting earlier was what he mentioned also in this meeting is we were paying out 80-some thousand to Head Start and ECAP. So in some ways we're only adding, 15 more or whatever, but just something to think about. But I like that James spoke to that we're gonna evaluate in the future, because I would like to see the program be self-sustaining as well. And I think it's something to kind of keep an eye on, but I also feel like it's a good way to start it, to get our feet under us and see what the program is like. And then we can kind of go from there through the budget process, but it'll definitely be something that we're evaluating each year in the budget process.
I do also want to share that we may not be afforded the ability to do it ourselves, because right now it's through providers like Boys and Girls Club, Opportunity Council. They get slots from DCYF. Ferndale's running theirs through the ESD. We wanted to run it through the ESD. They didn't get any more slots this year, so we had to come back to the Opportunity Council. So that's also a piece we're not clear about.
I mean, for me, it's helping 40 families.
Mhm.
So I think it's a good thing for MERIDIAN to do. So it's in the budget and we're helping 40 families. Agree? I think it's great. No other questions?
No.
Well,
I'm sorry.
sure.
Somebody else. I was gonna make a motion.
I will ask for it.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Can I please get a motion to approve the 2025-26 Opportunity Council ECAP contract?
I make a motion to approve the 2025-26 contract with the Opportunity Council for Early Childhood Education Assistance.
And I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
All right,
Thank you.
moving on for review policy 2230. Transition to kindergarten program. Good evening. So.
Back in 2019, Meridian School District with our legal counsel, developed a early entry kindergarten policy. And we attached it to policy 3110, I believe. And so it was embedded in there. Later, WASDA came out with its own policy for transition to kindergarten, transitional kindergarten. And so I'm bringing 2230 to you tonight for first read. This is an essential policy. It's new to the district. And WASDA created it to stay in compliance with the legislature.
And like I said, we created one in 2019, so we're just adopting WASDA's policy. Questions on this one?
There were hardly any change. I was surprised they went to that has to go forth for that, you know, the minimum of the change.
Yeah, and before it was kind of we borrowed their policy from another district and worked with our legal counsel to embed it in one of our own policies. WASDA didn't have one at the time, so WASDA came out with one specific to this, based on the legislature, so we thought it'd be cleaner to have its own policy, and then as WASDA updates things in the future, we'll also update it as we have been doing. I'm just gonna share a little bit. Over the last couple of years, you've heard me talk about going to Olympia to advocate for transitional kindergarten twice. Twice they've tried to eliminate it. The chair of the education department has been oppositional because it didn't come from the legislature. School districts took it on themselves to say, hey, we have funding. The RCW says we can actually use kindergarten funding to bring 4-year-olds in and get them prepared. They didn't like that legislature, this particular person did not. And so transitional kindergarten or early entry K or what's Bellingham's, they have it, yeah, but no, the promise is their strategic plan, but every district who did that, this particular lawmaker perceived it as a breach of contract with the legislature. It's gotta be blessed by the legislature. So one of the effects is that transitional kindergarten is not basic education funding. So they don't get as much flexibility as we typically would. So so there are some kind of back office, if you will, changes, but this gets us in alignment with the legislature. And there are no guarantees that we'll have TK every year moving forward. It's something that we're continuing to watch, but it's good for us to have alignment. Okay. And so going along with that, the next policy is 3110. WASDA has not updated this policy since 2011. Meridian School District updated this policy in 2019, and so we are just striking the language that was related to early entry kindergarten from 3110 and reverting it back to its original status. Questions?
It makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, moving on to old business, second review and approval of 25-26 MSD school board plan and work schedule calendar. Can I get a motion to approve the calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-26 Meridian School District School Board Plan of Work Calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Old business number. Second review and approval curriculum materials proposal. This is for food sciences. Project Lead the Way. And science curriculum proposal. Can I please get a motion to adopt this curriculum?
I'll make a motion to adopt the curriculum materials for food services, food sciences, and all the other ones you just listed.
I would second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Second review and approval panorama partnership agreement. Can I please get a motion to adopt?
I'll motion to adopt the Panorama Partnership Agreement as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right,
Aye.
Thank
all
you.
right. Moving on. Budget presentation. Some live action here.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited to bring forward the budget presentation for next school year, 25-26. I think we have a very good and accurate budget. It went through 6 iterations. We started the work, started talking about it in October. We started doing work on it in December. So this is like 6+ months of work coming to fruition here and, yeah, so we'll jump in.
And I'll just, before we even start, tell you that out of 7 years, this is the most intentional that we've been around budgeting. We typically start February with budgeting, but because of how things have gotten so constricted, it's so difficult to navigate financially. I mean, it's a good product for as much time has been spent on it, so anyway.
And, in the fall, we also worked to develop like the procedures on how we were gonna have the budget process go, and we tried to develop a process that would work in years where we're financially struggling and years where we're financially healthy. This new process seems to be even just more streamlined and just provide a good product. This first slide is on the budget enrollment. The column all the way to the right shows our annual average FTE for 24-25. Total enrollment, including our ALE program, Running Start, Open Doors, was 1869. We're budgeting a total enrollment of 1877, with 1,582 in the core program, 215 in MP3, which we've been pretty solid at that 215 mark for 5 years now. We have 60 in Running Start, 20 in Open Doors. And this next slide is just an overview of the general fund. We do have a balanced budget, revenues and expenditures at 37,536,000. There's just a $20 rounding difference between our system and then when I exported everything into the F-195. And we're projecting to have a ending fund balance of 2.5 million. And again, it's balanced, so we should end at about that same amount. This is the fund balance breakdown. It's actually a fairly simple fund balance breakdown because there's not a lot of carryover that's going into the following year. We did a pretty good job of spending all of our allocations. There's 20,000 for committed for compensated absences. That's like sick leave and those types of employee costs. Then we have 350,000 assigned to contingencies for major equipment repair replacement. I added $50,000 in there. Last year was at 300,000. I'd like to see us eventually get to 500,000 for that number, and it's kind of just a lesson learned when we had a year ago the septic issue, and we had some potential issues with windows, and just a bit of a scare of how major equipment breakdown could be a financial burden on the district if something like that came up. We have $60,000 in assigned fund balance, and these are the various carryovers that we allow within the district. For example, each of the building budgets, they're allowed to carry over 5% of their prior year's allocation. And that just makes it easier for them to target their spending at the end of the year. That way they can target that 5% number and they don't end up overspending their budget, and it allows them to, and most schools will try to carry over that 5%. The 2,062,500 is our minimum fund balance policy. So our board policy says that we'll maintain a fund balance between 4% and 5.5%. And we've always been able to maintain that 5.5% mark. And then in the 7,500, that's just the leftovers. That's unassigned fund balance. Any questions? this is the revenue summary. It doesn't have every revenue stream, but it has all the main revenue streams. Our local property tax, has an increase of 723,000. So 2025 was the first year of our, increased levy amount. And so we captured half of that increase, and so, and then we'll capture the second half in this school year. And then also there's a $300,000 escalation each year, for our property taxes, so, that's why we're seeing an increase there. Apportionment is up 748,000. Now, most of that is the increased enrollment compared to where we budgeted, so we were up around 60 kids and at 10,000 a kid or a student. That really captures most of that. There wasn't, besides the special ed below, we'll go over in a second, there wasn't really any new money or increases in allocations, during this legislative cycle. The special ed apportionment was up 126,000, and the state special ed is up almost 160,000. We're still over $1 million overspent in special education, so you know it helps, but it hasn't really solved the issue yet. Federal special ed is right about level. Title I was down, and it's showing down 52,000, but it's actually down further than that. So one of the things that we did to help balance this budget, so we ended up doing it, taking advantage of a rule that says you can do transferability between title grants. And so we took some funding from Title II, which is professional development mostly, and then Title IV. And we moved some of the allocation from those two grants into Title I to help us pay for staffing. And Title I is actually 100% staffing. Food service is down slightly, but not a whole lot. And so you've heard me talk about in the past how food service was a pretty rich program. Now it's right about level with expenditures and revenues being close to equal. Expenditures actually are a bit higher than revenues in this budget cycle, and that's really due to the increased cost of food. The learning assistance program, that district had quite a significant reduction there, 226,000. So during 24-25, we had funding for I just spaced the name, but lap high poverty. And so that went away. So that was like a 1-year boost in funding that actually helped us balance the budget in 24-25. So that went away. And we had to kind of get creative in our shifting of staff that we'll talk about more in the expenditure side of things. Transportation, it seems to be one of those allocations that is increasing a bit each year, but the funding is not increasing, but our ridership has been increasing, and we have very full buses right now, and it's a very efficient program. It's not quite self-sustaining, but it's close. But we do have, like when OSPI does our efficiency ratings, it's pretty highly rated efficient program. And then our technology levy, that's an increase of 158,000. And again, those technology levy expenditures flow through the general fund, and then the funds get accumulated into the capital projects fund, and at the end of the year we transfer them over. Sometimes we do a couple transfers a year for cash flow purposes. Any question on the revenue side of things? Expenditures, Kurt and I are gonna kind of tag team this, and so a part of this like a very large part of this process was the shifting of staff, and Kurt's really good at the day-to-day in that and the juggle, so I'll let him speak to this.
So some of the, as you heard Dr. Everett and Daniel mention, we started this process in October. And so it's really been a year-long process. And so we have also changed it to a district-wide. We used to look at it very isolated, building to building, and we made that shift. I think we started that shift last year, and so that's continued on. This year, because we didn't know what the funding was gonna be, we planned for multiple contingencies. So we had if we were $1 million short, we had that plan. We had a $1.5 million plan, and we had a $2 million plan. And then it was just kind of, we went through, we created those plans, and then we went through and we prioritized. Okay, what's our priorities? If we receive more funding, what's our priorities? What are we bringing back? And so because we had multiple conversations about that, once we knew the final amount, we felt we were in a really good place. So we knew what to do. So, but that was also the difficulty in communication with our staff, in communication with our community, was we didn't have the full picture. And so we were waiting on the legislature. So we continued to say, we're working on the budget, we're waiting, which doesn't make people feel very comfortable. So the other thing we looked at is how do we utilize, and we've been looking at this, how do we utilize existing staff to provide services for students? How do we shift them? How do we transfer them? How do we adjust what they're doing to keep those services to students? And the other thing that I will say is at the beginning of this, in October or sometime early on, Daniel made a prediction that he feels like we're going to be about $1 million short. And so we had the up to 2 million, we had the 1.5, and we had the 1 million, but it came in and it was pretty close to 1 million. So Daniel's, again, kudos to Daniel and the job he does. And then the other goal is, you've heard Daniel say it, you've heard us say it before, is that when we hire for the long term. But when we hire a continuing position, whether that's classified or whether that's certificated or our administrators, but it's not a short-term thing. We're building a relationship with this person. So it's really important for us to keep those permanent staff. So those are the goals. The methods we used are very similar to what we did last year. And the transfer and the shift is actual language from our teacher's contract. And so transfer is shifting to a different building, and a shift is changing within the same building. The one we added this year was reduction, because we either had to reduce the position and move the existing staff member to a different position, or we had to remove the position altogether. And then the last bullet is, as a team, as a budget team and as the executive team, we analyzed every vacancy. So if we had a mid-year request for a leave of absence, we brought the team together and we discussed, can we do it? Do we need it? Or can we get by? And if we do get by, what's the impact of that going to be? And so there is a tremendous amount of being intentional with each position that became vacant.
Yeah, I just want to add there that I think part of why this budget process was so successful is that we held the line all year long. And we did evaluate every request that came in, and we didn't add a whole lot. We stayed within the revenues that we received, plus a little bit more under. So that was very helpful. You do it with the button. Definitely again. I just broke it real quick, so we're firing it back up again.
All right. So we'll go through all of these. But changes in leadership, we had and we'll get to it later, but I'll talk to it now. At the middle school, we had a longtime music teacher retire. And through the MEA CBA, it allows a MEA staff member who desires to transfer to put in a request by March 15th. And if they are the most senior, they get that transfer. So music teacher at middle school retired. Music teacher Irene Ryther put in a request to transfer and so was awarded that transfer. And then that left a vacancy at Irene. Our assistant principal had a music background and had a music endorsement. And so we transferred that assistant principal into that music position. The result of that is we won't replace that assistant principal. And so that was part of our budget savings. That move was 100% based on budget. So, and then the other thing is some of the key things is our administrators, our principals, they agreed to just take a 3% increase versus what the 3% plus IPD. They said, you know what, we understand, we'll just take the 3%. Our exec team and directors are only receiving IPD. And these two groups last year, as a reminder, they all agreed to take a 3-day furlough. So just awareness there. Director changes. Our athletic director is now going to supervise our custodial staff. And they're aware of that, and they have a plan, and they'll be supported by Director of Maintenance, Jay Yeager. And then when our food director made his announcement that he was going to retire, that was another opportunity to analyze that position. And that position, when he was hired, was shifted to a 260-day contract. But prior to that, it was 215 days. And so if we consulted with him and said, you know, can this be done? He seemed to think so. We talked about executive team. And so we reposted it at a 215-day contract. So there'll be some budget savings there. And it also aligns with the work, I think. I think the next slide talks about the transfers. And we covered the music teacher. At the high school, we had a total of 1.4. We had a leave of absences, and we just shifted some of that. And so the high school was able to fill a need for a 0.6 PE, but still retain that 1.4 overall leave number. And then at the district level, this is one of those positions where we kept the person, but we had to reduce the position. And so our mental health coordinator is now going to be the counselor Irene Ryther instead of us hiring another one. And then our director of special services, Aaron Jacoby, will take on some of those additional jobs that are vacated. Again, the idea is if we reduce, how do we maintain the program and the services to our students? And then the next slide is special education. And we've talked about most of the things here, but one of the things that we did differently this year with special education is we wanted to, and jump in here, Daniel, but we wanted to budget for some anticipated needs. In previous years, we had budgeted for what we knew and what we knew the students were and those items. This year we wanted to change it up, not change it up. We wanted to be better prepared for next year.
I feel like we made a conscious effort to be more realistic with what the actual special ed costs would end up being. Where in past years, it was like, okay, well, how many one-on-one paraeducators do we have? Are any of those kids going away? Can we reduce the number of slots that we have? And we were budgeting leaner than we should have been in special ed. And this year, we're like, okay, well, we need to be realistic because special ed is really what consumes most of our post-budget ads each year. So let's be better about budgeting what the true cost is going to be for special ed. And let's also add one unfilled paraeducator position because there seems to always be some needs that come up. And it's a position that we won't hire, but we'll leave vacant until there's a need there. It gives us some flexibility with special ed funding or budget to do some problem solving.
And then the other one that we budgeted for is the 4th slot at Watkins Discovery. And that's about you see it up there, it's about 80,000. Every year we have a student who just needs a little bit more and needs some more support. And that's the, they go to Whatcom Discovery. And so if we don't use it, great. Ideally, we won't need it. But it's in the budget if we do need it.
And we were having indications that we would likely need it. That's what triggered the conversation. Okay, do we need to add this? And it's like, okay, the likelihood is we are gonna need it, so we should budget for it. So it's not an $80,000 hit for something that we didn't budget for.
But looking at
And
the
then,
slide, it's already included in the 320, correct? So we won't be at an all-in of 400. It's still at the 320. Thank you.
Correct.
and on this one, I feel like Dr. Everett and Daniel spoke about this earlier, so I'm not gonna, I don't know that I'm gonna spend a lot of time on this slide, but this is it's pretty exciting that we're able to offer in total 6 early learning classrooms. With the developmental pre-K, 4 TK and ECAP split, and 1 dedicated to 3-year-olds. That's a lot of growth for Meridian. It's pretty awesome for our families.
I guess the one piece that we didn't speak to is TK, and so TK is fully funded. And it's capped at this year's, or the 24-25 enrollment, which for us is 44.6. And so anyway, we budgeted 44. We're gonna try to keep those classrooms full so we can serve the kids, but also capture the potential revenue there. And so what that amounts to, or what it has amounted to, is 3 teachers and 3 paraeducators for 3 classrooms. But now that we're splitting it between 4, and we have to take the allocation of the TK students in the classroom and ECAP students in the classroom, and that has provided a little bit of capacity in transitional kindergarten funding. And so we have about $57,000 that we will need to spend in TK somewhere else. And so that's budgeted for. And right now, the first priority is to get those classrooms outfitted with furniture and the other needs that they have. We're gonna wait and see what needs come up in TK. And we also have the flexibility to carry over those funds if the needs aren't there. And then we can kind of see where the early learning program ends up panning out over the next couple of years.
And
So just real quick for clarification, the 6 classrooms will not increase headcount within the building.
say that
Because
last part, please.
You had mentioned that there wasn't any concern about overcrowding in the building because these 6 classrooms already had students. So we're not increasing headcount within the building, correct?
Well, we'll increase a little bit because the 3rd TK was not a full TK because we didn't have a full group, but since we're combining ECAP and TK, these will be 17 students per. We'll have capacity to go up to 20. So head count will increase a little bit, but for space, classroom-wise, we're not going to increase.
Okay, so head count is going up and we're removing 1 assistant principal to help manage that.
Correct. We're replacing that assistant principal with a dean.
Oh, okay. I didn't have that information.
And I'll probably speak to that in just a second. But
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And so for this TK ECAP model, we will need to hire 2 more certificated teachers and 2 more paraeducators. And those 4 individuals are in the budget. And then this upper half, so over the past 2 years, we've reduced 3 million, 2 million last year and 1 million this year.
Yeah.
We've reduced $3 million. We have reduced from a reduction standpoint, 1 classified staff member. And we have used provisional certificated teachers as part of their contract. Their first couple of years are provisional. And We released 2 on provisional status this year, and we released 2 last year. So we have really, our goal has been to maintain our staff, and we've done that to the best of our ability. Hopefully next year we won't be in the same situation, but we'll be ready if it happens. So
So for the MSOX, as you guys saw throughout the year, when we go through the monthly budget report, our expenditures are like right about there with where they've been budgeted. So it's really important to budget realistically and account for inflation. And so one of the earlier steps that we had was to get input from all of the administrators and directors on what accounts were directly impacted by inflation. And so we made some adjustments for inflation for accounts that were going over budget. And so there were some increases for inflation. The other increase that we had on the MSOC side was athletics travel was significantly under budgeted. And so we increased that to a level that should support the actual travel that we end up having with our sports. And then as we got to the end of this budget process, we weren't balanced. And so what I do this a few times throughout the process. I had already gone through it probably twice, but I went through a third time, looked through each budget line and where we spent over the last few years. And if there was a budget line that had the capability to be reduced, I reduced those. And that's how we got probably the final about $200,000 to get it to balance. So it's going to be a tight budget, but we've been really cognizant about our planning and making sure we're capturing everything that we at least know about now. So we should have less unforeseen circumstances come up that we have to, do problem solving at budget for out of the post budget ads.
before you move on,
Yeah,
I think a lot of the staffing and the position pieces, the one piece that I would share, we're pretty proud of where we landed, but I'll go back to the statement I made a few months ago. This is surviving. This is not thriving. This is, we have an elementary school that requires 2 APs and a principal, but we also have someone in a team that's going to do a really nice job. But we're going to work back to trying to get an AP to join the rest of the admin team. Losing our mental health coordinator, some of those duties Erin will take up. We'll probably tap her, but it's more critical to have 2 counselors at Irene right now. So some people are going to be doing double duty. Same thing with our athletic director supervising custodians. So we've got people doing multiple things to make this all work that they didn't ever sign up for, right? And so we're pretty pleased right now, but I want to impress upon you that it's taxing and it gets old after having done it a few years. But I also will say our staff have been great. They've been willing to, you tell us what we need to get us to do. So
I was kind of curious at how that would work, because at what point you have any conflict, like, wait, hey, my birthday, that wasn't my contract. That's not what I signed up for. Oh, so you're asking, this is all stuff I heard over 30 years, so I'm imagining you here too. And okay, now you expect me to do more, but I'm not getting paid it. I mean, but you said everybody seemed to be receptive.
we had people reach out and say, what do you need? There are some pieces that were driven by contract.
Okay.
And so there were some directives that were also put forward, right? So it's a mixture. But I think as we continue to communicate what the budget is and where it lands, we've been talking with our union groups. They understand what pieces have gone on, and so they've been partners, and these are where we're moving. This is what we're looking at, and so they understand what we're doing as well. And several times acknowledging our status compared to districts in the county. That's where So there's a mixture.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I guess when we say we're pleased, we're pleased that we didn't have to let go of permanent staff. And pleased that we have a budget that believe we can stay within. But it's a very lean budget, and just like cutting the $2 million last year made it lean, and then when you're going in and cutting another million on top of that, you're just super lean at that point.
To your point, Marty, last year we transferred quite a few paraeducators from building to building. And when we checked in with them, when I checked in with them in the fall and mid-year and towards the end, some of them were like, it's the best thing that's happened. Some of them were like, I don't want to, are you gonna move me back? They didn't want to go back. And so it's really a testament to our staff and the people we have here that they weren't happy about it when I shared the information with them. But when they got in the system, they did what they needed to do, and they ended up, in many cases, they ended up appreciating it and liking it. So I won't say that's across the board, but it was good to hear.
Well, absolutely. I mean, no reduction in force, but, you know, I would have a couple employees that's been on step 2 of the grievance process. And, you know, because nothing would make them happy, regardless, but I'm glad to hear that. That's good. Thank you.
This next slide is here because it's legislatively required to be here. It was like, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago, the legislator added a little bit of money to MSOCs, and they were kind of in the understanding that there's just gonna be this like flow of funds, and they wanted to make sure districts were spending it on MSOCs, so it's a comparison of how much you get funded for MSOCs and how much you pay for MSOCs, and we get funded for almost 2.5 million, we pay out almost 4.4, so there's still a shortfall of 1.9 million. Any questions on the general fund before we move into the other funds?
I do have a quick question.
Yeah,
So we say we've cut $3 million off the budget in the last 2 years, like the total number has gone up still. And so I think what we're saying, so if people ask me, if we had the same funding rules from 2 years ago, we're cutting $3 million off of those funding rules, is that right?
so essentially what it is you have you have contracts in place to pay your employees, and those contracts were all made 2 years ago for 3-year contracts. And they were essentially before the budget crisis. So, you know, people are considering the climate that we're in. Any of the people who are in the associations are getting pretty decent pay increases. But we're contractually obligated to pay those. Also you have the inflation that comes, and so the costs just keep going. The revenue isn't increasing as fast as the costs are increasing. So in order to balance the budget, you have to reduce your costs, and you have to reduce your costs by taking any open positions, and instead of filling those positions, you're shifting people over into them. That's the main area that we've been able to have savings. And you know, it has created some efficiencies to be very, very lean, but it comes at a cost. You have less people serving kids.
So we're climbing, but our cost is climbing faster, and that's where we're seeing the difference. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. That's a good question though. So ASB is pretty straightforward. Kind of really the only thing that I wanted to point out here is a year ago, the middle school ASB was struggling a bit, and now Robert Kratzik has come in, and he's really taken ownership in that and has some plans to like turn that around to where it's not bleeding funding, where the last few years before that, the fund balance was just getting used up and the expenditures were higher than revenues. And so he's got a plan to have a more balanced budget there. So I'm appreciative of that. But the revenues exceed expenditures by 20,000 projected. And our fund balance is ending around 2.5 million at the end of next year. Assuming all those revenues come in, we'll go up to 2.7 or 270,000. The debt service fund, the only thing that the debt service fund does is take in levy proceeds to pay for our bonds. And so this is the only bond that we currently have is the $17 million bond that was passed in 2010. That along with that funding and the funding that we got from the states, called SCAP funding, was replacement for IRE, for the modernization of IRE in high school. And so this is basically what we do is we just levy the exact amount of money that we need to pay back our bonds. The capital projects fund, it's really getting ready to gear up, but we have 3 projects right now. We have the Wacom Early Learning Center. It's a $12 million project. We did take in some revenue, mostly the local donation revenue that we had during this year. And we're expected to next year spend about $3 million and take in another 1.8 million. So once we start the work, that's when so all of our federal and state money that we have related to those are all reimbursement basis. So we'll kind of use some of that local money that we had for cash flow, and then we'll make some expenditures. And if you time everything correctly, you can actually pay out the bills and get paid by the state on the same day. And so we're gonna try to manage it very carefully so we don't have to do any short-term debt. The Whatcom County Skills Center is coming up. That's $60 million, but it's projected start of 2027, 28. So there aren't any dollars in there for revenues or expenditures. The district office and Whatcom County Skills Center classrooms, that's a almost $3 million project. And basically we spent the whole year going through the environmental study, and we're just about finished with that. And so we should be able to complete that work during this next year. So that's gonna keep Jay Yeager pretty busy.
Okay.
The next bullet point, capacity for district works projects. This, I mean, it is what it sounds like. It's capacity in case stuff comes up that we need to fix. So that's what that is there for. And then there's the technology levy. So the money comes into this fund, capital projects fund, and then will get transferred out into the general fund where the expenditures will accumulate throughout the year. There's a similar thing happening for project management, pay out $80,000 for project management. And then that gets paid out of the general fund, and then will get transferred over, and that comes from the various revenues from those projects. And then there's investment earnings and SEPA mitigation fee. That's the revenue side of things. So with all of our funds, I keep them basically at like a revolving zero balance where all the money is invested until we need it. So for the capital projects fund, instead of zero balance, it's a $10,000 balance. So we keep the cash account at $10,000 and everything else sits in investments. So we can capture some earnings on that. So just looking back up to that table, revenues are projected at $6,484,000, and expenditures are projected right about the same, $6,485,000. And then there's the transfer out, that's the technology levy. That's $101,137,000. also, it's the technology levy and that $85,000 for the project management. Right now, there's a typo here that should say 25-26 beginning fund balance is projected to be 2.2 million. And then we'll spend down about 1.1 million of that and end the year at about 1,062,000. Questions on capital projects fund? The transportation vehicle fund, we just received one bus in. We're expecting to receive another bus before the end of August. But what I've done is I've budgeted just in case that bus comes in next year. So there's $660,000 budgeted in transportation vehicle. Basically what that does is it allows us to buy buses as we need to. We have two more buses coming in the fall. So there's potential 3 buses but I budgeted for two of our shorter buses and 2 of our full-size buses in case we end up, because what you order and they take between like 9 months and a year. So that allows us, if that additional bus ends up coming in like next August or something, then we can pay for all those without doing a budget extension. So the revenues and all the revenues that we receive for the transportation vehicle fund are based on depreciation of the buses that we have in the fleet. So depending on how many buses you have, they depreciate them and they give you your money back by the end of the bus's life. It pays for the bus. So revenues, 365,000, expenditures, potential for 4 buses, 660,000, with expenditures exceeding revenues by 294,000. The beginning fund balance for next year is projected to be 405,000. The change in fund balance is 294, with an ending fund balance of about 110,000. And this, a few years back, there was a legislative requirement to do 4-year budgeting. So this is like an additional thing. After we finish our 1-year budgeting, I go in and I do the 4-year budgeting and do projections for revenues and expenditures. So pretty hard to see. Oh, there you go. So this first column here, 25-26, all of these figures match up with our F-195, which we just went through. This is the general fund. In 26-27, I projected revenues so for all of the years, I projected revenues to go up by 2.5%, with federal revenues being flat. There's a lot of rumors out there that federal revenues will go down starting 26-27. So that could be our next budget challenge, but we're not really speculating at this point. We're gonna problem solve as we get there. On the expense side, these projections have expenditures going up by 3%. If they go up further than that, that means we have to do more reductions to balance out the budget. And then for the 3rd year, 27-28, that to balance the budget, that with those increases I just spoke about, that shows a reduction of 2 certificated positions. And then in 28-29, get another 1.5. So if there isn't, basically what this is saying is if there isn't any new money coming through, we're kind of looking like we'll probably have to keep doing some reductions for the foreseeable future. Another thing that's worth pointing out down here is the ending fund balance is in this line here in the gray, the top line in the gray. And this is what it's projected to be for each year. It's pretty close to about 2.5 million. The minimum fund balance of that 5.5%, so that's 5.5% of your expenditures, so as your expenditures grow, that number also grows. And then I have a target. I would like to have higher than 7.5%, but this is kind of more of a reasonably attainable target, so if we're able to, you know, if we get any additional enrollment and we're able to save some of that funding without spending it, that can go towards the fund balance, so that's one of our goals. One of our goals is to increase our fund balance. And these would be kind of our targets to get there. Any questions on the 4-year budgeting for the general fund?
So that forecast is why we spent time in Olympia talking about the need for funding, because it is not sustainable.
Yeah. Clearly, there's a shortage.
Yeah, and I mean, costs are probably gonna go up by more than 3% too.
Oh, yeah.
The ASB, it's pretty simple. It's just taking the current budget and adding a little percentage for revenues and expenditures. Debt service fund, these are based on our actual bond repayment schedule and where we would project to levy out the revenue dollars to pay for those bonds. So these are pretty real real projections. And it kind of it has our ending fund balance hovering around $900,000. The capital projects fund, so what I've done is worked with Jay to figure out for each of those projects, what percentage of each of those projects we expect to spend in each of the next 4 years. We've actually gone out further than 4 years, but we don't, the F-195 app only covers 4 years. And see, so these are actual projections of revenue that we foresee we will get for those projects and expenditures for those projects. And it has our fund balance hovering right around $1,000. Because once we get rolling in the projects, they're all reimbursement basis. So essentially we spend the money and then we get the money back. Transportation vehicle fund. So as I talked about earlier, I've given us capacity in that first year in case we need to, in case worst case scenario happens and 4 buses get purchased in 1 year. And then what it has, more likely what we are trying to do is purchase 2 buses every year. And we're trying to have a consistent replacement schedule of 2 buses a year. And what that does is it maximizes our depreciation revenue. And it makes it so you don't run into a situation where you have a lot of buses coming off at once and then you have to buy a whole lot of buses. And we're in a really good place with our depreciation schedule and our bus replacement schedule. But it also has in year 2, that's the value of 2 buses. In year 3 and 4, that's the value of 1 bus. But what will likely happen is we'll actually only get 2 buses in the first year and then we'll do 2 in each year. Does that make sense? Any questions?
That was a great presentation.
Thank you.
Very easy to follow.
Appreciate it. When you've been living it for a long time, you kind of just know it.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of prep needed when you've been living it.
I don't have any questions, but I just respect all the work that's put into this and all the hard effort. I mean, that's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a team effort.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
a lot of good work.
Starting in October.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
From
Long haul.
Thanks a lot. Good job. I swear I'm better at my own computer than this one.
Logan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you. So I think the next step in the agenda is to open it up for the budget hearing, and then from there, then we'll, ask the board to adopt the resolution.
I don't think there's any public comment for the budget.
We don't have a sign up for that. Was one of those for sign up? I'm sorry. We do, and there were no names.
Michelle, do you have any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Well, guess we can move on to budget adoption. Can I please get a motion to adopt resolution 0425?
So I'll make a motion to adopt the 2025-2026 district budget and approve resolution 0425 as presented.
I will second. I'll second. Sorry, Jenna.
All those in favor?
Alright,
I,
Thank you. I'll recommend Daniel, I think our executive group and also building administrators and our teachers, because the last 3 years, really, it started 3 years ago, then last year and this year, things have been tight. People have had to take on extra things. So
I think it's great.
it's good to see. I don't like people being put in that position, but it's good to see collectively working together and trying to make things work for our kids.
Yeah. Seems like the Meridian community really matters. All the staff and all the administrators and everybody, you know, they know what it takes to keep this show rolling.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to the board, and I appreciate your support, and thanks for approving the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And Daniel, we trust.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do we have any information from our student board representative?
Not really. The last time we met was in May. We had a pretty successful meeting, and we meant to meet again in June, but with like schedules and stuff and Kennedy graduating, we weren't able to make it happen. But I connected with, the administrators around our school or around our district, and I know we had some changes, but I think we're ready to continue with our district-wide advisory group.
Good.
And I'm excited for next year.
We get some pretty positive responses too. I can tell you that administrators district-wide appreciate what you and Kennedy did to organize things and get us launched. So I want to make sure you hear that.
Thank you.
Eden excited to join the board?
Oh, yeah. She's been right now.
Yeah.
This basketball camp at Western, so.
Oh, that's
Right up at 10:30 this morning.
Very cool. All right, do we have any information from, the board directors? We got a big golf tournament this Saturday.
yeah, that came up, so, Lawrence Johnson, he gave me a call, he saw that golf tournament coming up, he's from the class of 88 alumni, he graduated with you, didn't he, Bruce? Lawrence, yeah.
Yeah.
So Lawrence, he has this large, like toe behind pig roaster, I mean, he's been there for years where he roasts a whole pig. And so he's asking about the foundation, the golf thing, and I said, well, I think it's a Saturday, so I asked a little too soon. But he did say he'd like to do the alumni event that's gonna come out in August, he can come out and do that. And I brought out the September 27th football game from Bob Ames, we talked about doing a barbecue. And he said he'd be more than willing to pitch in. He said next year he'd do the golf thing for you guys, but he would ask that we provide the meat.
It's understandable.
So I was gonna give him some people to reach out to, but next year, think about that, I think that draw a crowd, so.
There's also,
He's a really good guy.
there's also one that Bryant runs. It's like the third week of July, but I'm always out that week, but there's another one. There's like
Oh, is
two
there?
Meridian,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Things. So
So he's asking.
that's awesome. Very cool.
Okay, well, presentation from Mr. James.
Well, I spent a few days visiting my daughter and came back for a day, and then I was out for surgery, and so I didn't have a whole lot to report. I am happy to share, however, at the state summer conference for AWSP in Wausau, our administrators shared the hiring process that we go through with Zoom screeners, and then, we had about 20 people in the room, talking about how when you hire someone, that's one of the most important things that you do, because they become part of your organization for a long time. That's your hope, right? And so oftentimes you're relegated to 20 or 30 questions trying to get the best performative understanding of what they can do. And as Tyler Dawkins says, teachers are up teaching 90% of the time. So why not see them do that while you're going through the hiring process? So they do the Zoom screeners, they have a few questions they do, and then based on that performance, they go in and do classroom demos. And then from there, they have a coaching scenario that happens in there so that they understand what it is they're going to be engaging in, and then make the decisions. And they didn't just talk about it. Adrian was with me as well. What they did is they took the group through it, and it's really positive feedback. And so, super proud of our administrative team, both for doing that and also for the work that they're doing. We see a lot more collaboration up and down the district than we've seen in years past. And so pretty excited.
Great.
And the award that IRE got.
Mhm.
That's right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I just saw that.
Yeah.
On the map.
I think more to come.
Yeah. Very cool.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn and sign some official documents.
Thank you.